So welcome back to another episode. This episode is going to be about making this car look a little bit fresher for the winter. So obviously at the minute, it's got lightweight wheels on there at the minute. It's Team Dynamics Pro Race 1.2s and we've got 88R tyres on there. And you can see this massive arch gap as well we've got. And I can't be dealing with it anymore. I've been moaning about it for a while. And obviously to compensate for that, I've had to raise the rear as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to swap these wheels out, swap the suspension out, lower the rear, and make it have a little bit more fresher look on it. So we're going to change the wheels for some snowflakes. So I'm going to paint them up because I've got to get to painting them. And then we're going to swap them over, mess around with this stance, show you what shocks I'm using and why I'm using them. So enjoy the episode. Right, so I'm just in the process at the minute of finishing off these snowflakes so I can get them on the car. So the other two I needed painting. So these have been painted in an epoxy primer. Now normally if you was going to do like a one stage primer, you'd use an X primer on bare aluminium. These were stripped back, sandblasted, and then I filled in any of the scuff marks that were in them, or sanded out any of the light ones. And you can see here now nice and smooth they've come out. So just a selection of paints that I use. Obviously this has been epoxy prime like I just said, and that creates a really tough coating for the high build primer to attach to, and it doesn't create stone chips like you get on the cheaper paints. So the paints, these are just a selection of the paints I use. So this is the epoxy primer, the Noval stuff. It's absolutely amazing. You might have seen that I've done the whole underside of the red car with this epoxy primer when it was bare metal, and you can see it's obviously anti-corrosion for steel, but it's very good for aluminium as well because you use a hardener in it, and I love paints that have hardeners in it because they're the best quality paints, and as you can tell they get really hard, whereas 1K paints, they just don't get hard enough. And then the coating that I'm using as well for the actual alloys itself is actually a custom coating. So even though this is the code that comes with it, I've had a little bit more metallic put into this, and it comes out like a bit like a chrome. I mean, you can kind of see it there. There's a lot of metallic in there. You can see coarse silver, and it looks really good when it's on the car. That's Star Silver. So there's some more of it here. And then I use some 2K clear coat. So I've got a couple of them that I use. I like this one here, this crystal clear anti-scratch. It doesn't create obviously scratches, chips. It's really, really tough. Obviously when you use it with a hardener, it gets really, really tough, and it acts like petrol resistant, you know, brake dust, any of the race pads that I use, absolutely perfect for it. So I'm going to get to coating them. Tyres mounted onto the wheels, so the wheels are looking fresh now as you see me painting them all up with that nice sparkle in there. Obviously it don't show really till you see it in the sunlight. But we've got the Michelin Pilot Sport 3s on there at the minute. Obviously these ain't no semi-slick tyre, but they're a very good tyre for the winter. Loads of wet weather grooves. It's a nice performance tyre for the the wet, cold weathers that we're going to be getting. Obviously, semi-slicks don't work very well in the cold temperatures, and they're prone to cracking, etc. I've run 888s throughout the winter and that, and it's not a good idea. So got lovely deep grooves in there to get rid of the water. Mainly going to be on the rears. Probably put a set of wet weather grippier tyres on the front, obviously for traction. So we're going to get these on, replace them Team Ds. So onto the shock and spring setup we've got on the car. So you can see here we've got Bilstein or Bilstein shocks, whatever you want to call them. I think these are just like an OEM replacement. They're still good, they ride nice, they're pretty much new. Just a bit of surface corrosion where it's been sitting around. As you know, it was off the road for 4 years. And we've got some E-batch springs on there. You can see these are obviously in good condition as well, so there's no corrosion, no rust on them, so you know they ain't soggy or anything. So they ride nice, the car does ride nice, but as you can see it's just too high. So we're going to pull these off. I'm going to show you the comparison of different shocks and springs and why you can't just run super lowered spring like on a standard shock. So I can't put like a lower spring than it's got on there now on these shocks. So here you can see both shocks side by side. So obviously with the left hand side's the Bilstein with the E-batch springs, which is a lovely ride. But just not low enough, and then you've got the SPAC shocks and the SPAC springs on the right, which is going to be lower. You can visually see that it's lower anyway, but the purpose of this obviously video is just to show you that you can't just put lower, well you can put lower in springs but not real lower in springs like these ones. I think these are like 60mm, whereas these are like 35mm. And you can't just bang them onto a stock shock because the actual shock itself on a performance shock is shortened. Now if you look at this section here, inside here, that holds the shock absorber oils and the shaft itself, you can see how much shorter the actual performance shock is over the standard OEM one. So you can see there. So if you was to run this spring setup on this shock, you're literally going to be running the bump stop all the time. You're just going to be hitting that bump stop because the shock is so short, whereas you've got an extra 20mm of clearance here before you hit the bump stop, and that's what it's designed to do. So you can visually see the difference in shock. Now I've got other shocks, got coilovers and the gas adjustable shocks as well, and I'll show you them as well just side by side so you can see. Right, so in the middle here is another good example. This is a gas adjustable shock, so it's got an adjustable dampening because the piston has a adjustable settings inside it. You can see here, obviously it's got a surface corrosion because it's been sitting in storage, it needs a lick of paint, but actually works perfectly fine. You can see here it's got the little obviously gas toggle that changes the dampening on the top. You spin that and turn that, and it can turn it from like soft to hard or whatever. It's a good setup for like Group N cars that have got to look OEM, can't have coilovers, etc. So they come out with this design, and you can see here the piston in the middle is a lot shorter even than the right hand side, and you can see here the actual body is shorter as well. So you look at that, which is shorter than that, but you can see the difference there. So you can tell that all shocks might look the same visually, or you might think, you know, go into the manufacturers and get the exact same shock, but they're not. They're different, shortened, different heights. That's why OPC runs different shocks to stock cars. Obviously this is a stock car shock, and it's probably why it rides so high. If I did actually put that spring onto that shock, it would probably drop it a little bit lower. I might try that in the future. I'll paint these up, give them a lick of paint and new stickers and put them on, and then I've got an adjustable dampening setting on the front if I ever want to take it on track. I've obviously got a set of coilovers. I'm not going to show you them because you know what coilovers look like. I just wanted to show you McPherson struts and spring setups, and I hope that helps you a little bit to wonder why that you'll put really short springs on your car, maybe 60mm lowering on a stock shock, and you're literally like hitting a brick wall every time you hit a bump because it's just literally riding on the bump stops. You're going to actually need a lowering performance shock, which is what these are. So I've just adjusted the anti-roll bar into its stiffest setting. You can see here there's two holes. Obviously the closer towards the beam, the stiffer the setting, so it's perfect for a road car. There's also a setting as well up here in this bracket up here, but you can see basically if you want to have the softest setting, you have it on this longest one and this longest one here. You're only on the hardest setting, you have it on that one and that one here. And I find that on a road car, heavy car like this, on the road, it actually is the best setting to have it on, is the hardest setting, and you can have some nice camber on the front, get that rear turning in nicely. So let's get to dropping down this spring seat. I've obviously just loosened it off a little bit. So basically these are very similar to a coilover. You just use a coilover spanner, and you can just literally knock off this locking ring at the bottom. Once you knock that one off, and then you can just literally spin it down to whatever length you want it. What I normally do is use a tape measure, small tape measure, just to measure it from the seat, and then you're always going to get an accurate reading either side. So at the minute I think it's set at an inch or 1.25 inches, so I'm going to just measure it drop it down whatever millimeters I need to. Do that on both sides and we'll have a nice even. Well, just underneath the car for a little bit, I just got to address a few issues under here. So the boost pipe I could hear was rattling on this sump, which is getting on my nerves. And when I've looked, you can see it's worn down a bit of the paint and a bit of the alloy under there. So just adjusting this boost pipe now, so loosening everything off. It's a bit of a weird system actually, the AirTech intercoolers. So you know, you've got the normal style boost pipe here, but then it goes back up again. Try and get to it. So it goes back up here, so upwards, and then sort of downwards again instead. I don't really know like why they've done it that way, but what happens is you get clearance with the chassis leg issue here. So this silicone hose obviously pushes up against the chassis leg. Try and get the light on it, and that causes like space issues. And then you've got this is running like really tight to the subframe, and then it hits on here as well on the sump. So just adjusting all that now, shortening a bit of silicone down, and then I'm just going to push it on a bit tight so we don't know no issues with that. Also I can see a slight coolant leak up here, even though that clamp's really tightly done up. So basically I'm just doing a few maintenance issues. That clamp's really tightly done up, but you know, the silicone hoses don't always seal properly, so going to address that one from the top. And the other issue is obviously common on a lot of these lowered cars, like I hit a speed bump the other day, you can see here, although the flexi isn't blowing itself, it's just dislodged this standpipe a little bit, so you can see it's slightly blowing from here now, where the gasket is. So I'm going to put a new gasket on there, and then up here it's just dislodged the V-band a tiny bit, so it's only a little blow, barely hear it, but I don't like these exhaust systems blowing because they sound nasty and raspberry. So just going to address that as well. So going to just undo the clamp, undo this down pipe, undo the pre-cap, and we're going to put a new gasket on there with a nice new seal, so it's got no blows at all. I've checked the flexi oil as well, having the car running, everything is absolutely no blows from that, so I'm fine with that. It's just torn off a little bit of stainless. So I decided to pull the whole down pipe off so I could check the same issues that we obviously had with the Miltech exhaust. Now you can see here it obviously is a 2-inch system all the way through, which is nice, but obviously they have to seal that somehow. Instead of sealing that with just a bolted flange, which would have been a better idea, they decided to seal it with like the old school sort of OEM flange. You can see here it's not as bad as the Miltech system, which obviously stepped down and had that nasty obviously lip inside the exhaust like that one. If you ain't seen that, go and check the last video on the red GSI. But you can see here this is a Cobra front pipe, Cobra Sport, and it's obviously a true 2-inch system, but it still does taper down. So I just measured the inner of this, and obviously 1.5mm wall, so it'd be 60mm inner, which I'll show you, and then it steps down to 55mm, which is 2.25. Now I know you might think that's only 1/4 of an inch, but stock system is 2.25. You might as well have left the stock system on if you're going to leave a bottleneck in there. So I haven't got a flange with me at the minute, 2.5 inch, because most of my stuff is 3-inch. So I'm going to order myself one and do it in the future. But I just wanted to show you that even on like what you'd think was a true 2.5 inch system, it's still got a bottleneck in there. And that's why you get so bigger gains from the true 3-inch systems, because the 2.5 inch systems are actually most of the time 2.25 to 2-inch actual inner diameters. So get out there and check your front pipe. So here's some just quick measurements here to just show you the inside diameter of this obviously flange or sealant ring, whatever they call it. So you can see inside there, inner diameter of that is 55mm. If you change that to inches, it's 2.18, so just over 2 inches. So it's not even 2.25 inch inner diameter of that. So you're going from a true 2.5 inch to 2.1, which is not as bad as the Miltech, but it's still quite bad. Obviously the outer diameter of standard 2.5 inch exhaust is obviously 64mm, which is 2.5 inch. You can see there, perfect. And then inner diameter should be around 3mm smaller, obviously allowing for the wall thickness of the stainless. So you can see inside there, true 2.5 inch system, so 2.363, which is 60mm, so that's perfect. So 63 for the outer diameter, and the inner diameter is 60mm. So that's exactly what you should be seeing on a 2.5 inch system. So you really want that 2.5 inch to be going all the way through and flowing well, instead of having this obviously step lip in there. that acts as a restrictor. Now on like mopeds and stuff, they restrict the exhaust systems with these sort of things, and it proper saps the power. So if you have got a join flange system on your 2.5-inch system, get out there, get rid of it. You know, get an exhaust system, make it true 2.5-inch, maybe put a V-band on there and get rid of these nasty sealant flanges that are going to cause a bottleneck and lose your power. So you can see here, even with the restrictions that sealing ring does inhibit, you can see it's still not as bad as the Miltech system. That Miltech system was terrible, that front pipe. You can see here there's probably another, I don't know, 7 or 8 mil if you add each side up, probably 4 mil each side. Restriction in there, and as you know, that went down to 1.9 inches in there, which was crazy. You can see that step in there. So on these exhaust systems, I prefer the slip-on flange style ones. You can see here where actually the exhaust extends out to like 68 mil, and then you obviously your exhaust system, the outer diameter pushes into there, and it creates a nice flow all the way through the exhaust system. No flanges, no gaskets, and you normally have no blows. You can just put a nice bit of gasket sealant in here, and it doesn't blow at all. Now I have got a 3-inch exhaust system for this car. If I want to put it on it, it's a true 3-inch exhaust system, but the issue I'm having is on the 3-inch exhaust systems with the stock turbo. Now it doesn't matter on aftermarket turbo, the stock turbos, they're very raspy. I've got a central silencer in it, and these back boxes are just too small. I do love the rolled out tailpipes, they are really nice, but the exhaust system and the back box is just too loud for a daily car. It will gain me horsepower, but the 2.5-inch system on boost probably sounds better in my opinion. I do prefer the exhausts with a big back box on the back, even if it ain't got a resonator in the middle of it. When you have a big back box on the back of these Z20lets, gets rid of all that nasty raspiness. Now, I would like to put a same size back box as this one, which is obviously for a 2.5-inch. I would like to put that onto a 3-inch system, which obviously is this one. You can see the size difference, it's massive. And these Cobra ones, obviously with that oval box, just create too much raspiness. So if you know where I can get this from, this is 8 inches. 8 inches in diameter, which I just checked, and it's 18 inches long. I'd like to get one of them with a 3-inch bore. So if you know anyone, or you know someone who can do me one, drop me a message, because I want one of them, and I'm probably going to replace this one with that and put a central resonator in it as well. And I might even fit that 3-inch system just to see how it sounds. I do like the 2.5-inch noise, the way it screams. If you ever had one, you know it screams. But obviously the extra flow of a 3-inch system is important. So as you can see here, I do play around with exhaust systems a lot. I've got loads of 2.5-inch systems, 3-inch systems, etc. So I do try different silencer sizes and just see what the best sounding exhaust are. That's why whenever I do fit these exhaust systems, I kind of I've already tested out different systems in the past. Another thing that does shut them up a little bit, but if you can't really use them if you've got ignition cut, is a sports cat. So you can see this one's been cut out, but if you want to put a sports cat into your 3-inch exhaust, it will shut it up. It acts as like a silencer. So when it comes to sealing these exhausts up, forget about all that crap you get from the parts stores, you know, Halfords or whatever, this Holt's exhaust assembly pastes and stuff like that. The only good ones are the ones with the fiberglass bits in it. This sort of stuff is no good at all. This is the best stuff that I've ever used. Obviously I've used everything over the years, from silicone to exhaust paste to whatever. Fire cement, so it's made by GSL. I get it obviously trade, and you can see it takes temperatures up to 1500 degrees, and it's for sealing and repairing fire bricks, fireplaces, solid fuel ovens, boilers, central heating, etc. So if you're a boiler, you've probably seen this before, and it's the best stuff I've ever used. Obviously it just seals the exhaust up and you never have any problems, resist all the vibrations, whatever. You can even seal up V-bands with this, which I never do, but you can if you really wanted to. You can seal a V-band up with that, and as long as you ain't got a cat, obviously you don't want any of this stuff going downstream into your cat and blocking it up. So make sure if you do fit any of this cement stuff, you ain't got a cat, or you always do it downstream with the cat, otherwise you're just going to have a blocked cat. Another good benefit about it is as well, it's really thick. They call it cement obviously because it's like cement. You see how thick it comes out, and you can proper smooth it into the areas you want with your fingers, and you can see it sticks to it nicely and it dries really fast. Don't have to wait ages for it to cure. This cement stuff here, you have to wait overnight. This fire gun Holt stuff, you have to wait overnight, and look how runny this stuff is. I mean, I don't know what you're supposed to use that for. It looks like toothpaste. So that flange is all nicely sealed up now. Now what I do is obviously I smooth this as well, so that I know that if there's a blow, you normally see like a black charcoal effect. It's hard to see against the stainless. So when you smooth it, you can see if there's been a blow in between that when you get under it for maintenance. Right, so I'm going to go with a 10mm spacer on the back of these because snowflakes look absolutely lost on the back of these cars. They sink right into the arches. I was going to go with a 20mm spacer on the back, but it just doesn't clear. I mean, it probably would. I don't want it scrubbing, but you can see these arches are very good condition. You can see like they've never been cut. They've got no rust bubbles on them, and if you know these cars, because obviously it's a low mileage car, you know that these arches do start rusting and bubbling over time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave them alone. If I could have run 20mm spacers on the rear, I would have done, but I don't really want to run a stretched tyre, so we're just going to run a 10mm spacer on the back just to stop them looking so sunken in. I think that's perfect because you've still got the hub centric to stop the wheel wobble, and the wheels are going to look a lot better. They're not going to look like right sunken in. Well, there we go, that's the car completed. So what do you think of that? So obviously the wheel changes, the lowering of the front and the back, and the stance is massively better. Obviously now we've got the spacers on the rear with a 10mm. I did try 20mm spacers on the rear, but the arches on the back of this are so good, absolutely no corrosion at all on them. Try and zoom in, you can see there, like the arches are absolutely perfect, not a bit of rust on them, which is really rare for these cars. So I'm very happy with how that is, and I'm going to have no scrubbing or anything. I might drop this a little bit more. There's a little bit of arch gap here. I just leveled it out and see the actual rake of the front to back is actually pretty good. I've done it with a bubble and just seeing what the level of the car is, and it's pretty much dead straight now. So from experience, I know that that's the best for traction and handling. You can see that obviously the rear is a tiny bit higher than the front, and that's how I like it. So what do you think of the snowflakes? Bit of a change up. Obviously I've had Team D's and wheels like lightweight wheels on for so long. I just thought I'd go for a little bit of more of an OEM wheel when you can't beat a snowflake, especially in silver. I've got another pair of them as well, another set of them that I might do in gloss black just to see how they look, and obviously then I have another set for the GSI. I can swap backwards and forwards from silver to black. So obviously the car's had a little bit of a wash, looks a lot better. I put the GSI arch spats on the rear, you can see there.